What were your thoughts on the kind of racing that we saw this weekend? Do you think this is a car problem, a Bristol problem, a Cup Series problem, all of the above? What's going on with Bristol?
I'm really not one to say, but as a matter of fact, I was covering the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach during yesterday's Bristol Food City 500. So, but I have seen the bits and pieces that I need to see to know what's been happening to Bristol, I guess. And looking at last year's spring race being such a hit, bringing it back to concrete and being on tires that just went to shreds. Of course, that's not a long-term solution, but it provided a really captivating race last spring. And then we found out that going to the night race, the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol, that it was going to be back nothing like it was for spring. And so we got that, and we got a ho hum race, and we come back to the spring. These tires aren't falling off, and so we've got a ho hum race, but we've got the best of the best dominating the field, and that's Kyle Larson putting a spanking on the entire field. So, I mean that's what happened. He almost got the full weekend sweep had it not been for Chandler Smith there in the Craftsman Truck Series on Friday. But he very well could have taken the entire weekend. I don't want to say it's a car problem, because we see other places on the calendar where it does very well, but it feels like it's more of a tire thing. But it's certainly not the best thing in the world to have your Gluck poll say an 80-20. That's definitely not good news. But I did not participate in this Gluck poll because I felt like I wasn't qualified to be weighing in on it. But I've seen this movie before. The last year's night race at Bristol was a snoozer, and Kyle Larson being the dominator. There's a reason though. I think the blame really needs to be set, I guess, on the track, because you look back at how it was before the progressive banking was set there, and changing how the top behaves with the cars. It's not the Bristol that it was that they're trying to throw back to, certainly. So it's a very different animal, and so there's a reason that crowds dwindled on the spring date, and they had to move it to one event. And there's also a reason that we decided to put dirt on it for a few years, and that was kind of at the beginning, but it got better as it went on, and then we went back to concrete how we are now. And it was a hit last year, so we come to this year and you get this. So it's a mix of a lot of things is my final answer. But what are you thinking?
Well, I don't know. And I think that's kind of the problem that we have as race fans all the time. It's the stereotype, I think, is that NASCAR fans don't know what they want. And I've got to confess here that I'm kind of in that boat right now, because after last year's race, I was like, guys, texting my friends, like, if you didn't watch the race, like watch the highlights, watch the full replay if you can. This was the best race I've seen in years. And thinking, like, why did we ever pour dirt on this place? This was a throwback to, the great place that Bristol is, the great racing that we see here. And here I am a year later, and I'm like, you know what? Why did we stop putting dirt on Bristol? It was a novelty. It was a new event. It diversifies the schedule. I don't know. I mean, I see Nicholas's comment here. NASCAR needs to give drivers more horsepower. I mean, that's a drum that I will continue to bang for until the end of time here.
Big motor, small blade.
Yeah, exactly. So they need to do that, or you're going to see more of this, and Bristol might lose a date. That's another part of the conversation. And again, that would have been unthinkable even, I think, 5 or 10 years ago. Bristol going down to one date. But again, I will just say for the record here, and if you're a regular viewer of the show, you might know, but I hold this opinion. NASCAR is one of the very few motorsports, at least pre-pandemic. I know some places have adopted, double headers and, then doubled up on venues to just try to get their complete schedules in. And some places have maybe held on to that. But one of the very few series that I can think of that goes to tracks more than once a year. So if you ask me, a perfect NASCAR schedule, if I were king for a day, as Ricky Craven said last year, if I ruled the world for a day, I would say the NASCAR schedule should be 28 to 32 races at 28 to 32 unique tracks. The one exception I would be willing to give is Daytona, because I think A, the place is big enough in terms of NASCAR history, and B, the summer race itself, the Firecracker 400, has enough of a tradition on it to stand on its own there. I don't think we need to get rid of that date. But I would say the caveat to that would be, if you are going to go to a venue twice, do something different. So if that's Charlotte, you say, you want to be at, the team's home track, so to speak, in the NASCAR hub twice a year, then keep running the Roval. That's not very popular of an opinion, I think, of an next-gen era, considering we've seen better racing at intermediates and road courses. But again, in a perfect world where the racing was great at all tracks right now, I would say that would be my take if you're going to go to Charlotte twice a year. And I would say for Bristol, how could you make the racing different? Have a dirt race in the spring and then have a night race be the fifth crown jewel, if you will, the biggest non-crown jewel race perhaps on the schedule. There's obviously great tradition and great fanfare around the Bristol night race. I don't think that's an event that's going to fall off the counter anytime soon. But I will just say that if this continues to be the reaction, if we continue to see the crowd sizes dwindle at Bristol Spring Race, how much longer can you justify giving this track 2 dates on the schedule? I think it's a question that needs to be asked, because we cannot continue to go back here with fans, and especially what happened this weekend. It was very unfortunate because people were expecting that we'd see something similar to what we saw last year after practice. And then obviously we got quite a bit of a dud in the race. When there's so much hype and so much anticipation, and you get a race like that, it's just a massive letdown.
It's the kind of track where you like, don't stop showing me highlights of 1998. Stop showing me 2002. You can't keep relying on your that far away past to keep selling tickets for 26. Like that's not going to keep, that formula is not going to keep working forever if you can't prove that you're still the last great Coliseum. And I love Bristol Motor Speedway. That was my wife's first true NASCAR experience several years back, and we had an awesome time. It was 2019. It was watching Matt DiBenedetto try to hold off Denny Hamlin and vice versa. That was, Eric Estep said it best yesterday. He said Bristol Motor Speedway is in a very temperamental state right now. It's a temperamental kind of track where there's some, like, we don't know currently what we're going to get each time we come there. There's going to be some days where, wow, that was awesome. This is why we like Bristol. And then you get one like yesterday where it's like, what? Oh, this track. Why did they mess it up? Like how they massacred my boy. Like, it used to be so great. Like, and like the way, and they're right, the way that Bristol used to be in the early 2000s, late 90s, it was, whenever they'd come off the banking, it would just kind of, it wasn't, the non-progressive banking, it kind of jutted you back in to those straightaways. It was very unique in that way. It wasn't so clean of a transition to the bankings. It probably took the drivers for a jerk. It probably know that much, but yeah, when I want to see Bristol, sadly, I still go back to the Sharpie 500 and go see what that old surface used to look like. They can put dirt on the whole place. Surely they can, SMI or someone can take a look at this if they wanted to, and retroact the surface. Why did they go away from this surface in the first place? I guess is my other detective question. I couldn't tell you I don't know my Bristol history, like pinpointing the year that they switched to progressive banking. Was like 2007?
It was 07. Yeah. And I remember we were talking about that in the Slack chat earlier this week. Because again, 07 is really near and dear to my heart, because that was the first year I watched full time. I watched a couple of races in 06, but really got into it in 07, watched the series, watched all 36 races, as much as I could at least. And I vividly remember that was like the in-race poll question on NASCAR and Fox. Like, are you excited for these changes that Bristol's going to be making? And it was like 45 yes, 55 no. And Darrell Waltrip said in the booth, like, that was actually a lot closer than I was expecting, because of how popular Bristol is as a track in NASCAR.
Yeah.
So that was and that was weird as well, because like they did it mid-season, like they did it over the summer, and we come back for the fall, and I still remember ESPN was broadcasting that race. They have the TV rights for second or last third of the schedule, I guess. TNT didn't have as much of a block as Fox and ESPN did at the time, but the third network to come in at that point in the season, regardless. And I think the race was relatively clean by Bristol standards at the time. I mean, not as clean as we saw this weekend, but if I recall correctly, I think Casey Kane might have been on pole, and we ran like the first 100-something laps under green, and everybody was like, when are we going to get that first caution? How have we not stacked somebody up yet? So it was evident right away that the racing that we were seeing was different. And the top line was, now a preferred line in a way that it hadn't been before. And, it's just, again, I don't know if it was necessarily, and again, I wasn't on, of course, Twitter was in its infancy, and I certainly wasn't on social media as a 9 or 10-year-old, but, I don't remember watching those races in 08, 09, 10 or whatever and thinking like, man, that first Bristol race was so great and this is absolute garbage. I wish they never change it back. I think there's a lot of variables that go into the reaction that we got this weekend, and I think it's certainly debatable. Obviously, you look at Richmond and Martinsville, and I think you can say the next gen era has not produced great races on the short tracks.
Still the weak link.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you can look at that. You can also look at the rules package that we're using, from track to track, and is it a engine package issue? Is it a fundamental issue of a next gen car? I think what you have to acknowledge, though, is that a large portion of your fan base is not happy and has valid concerns. And again, I hate to throw him under the bus, but when I hear Pete Pistone on the morning drive today talk about how his Chicago Cubs beat the LA Dodgers 16-0, and that's a bit of a snooze fest for neutral baseball fans that want to see a competitive game, and he says, well, MLB is not going back to the drawing board on how to fix baseball. I just don't know how that's a relevant analogy there, because that's one individual game where one team was much stronger than the other on that particular day. And I understand that.
Yeah, and baseball is a whole different animal with starting your pitchers and who's in your bullpen, who comes up next. Like
there are so many
from night
variables
to night. Yeah,
so many variables that you have to use to get to that situation over in baseball. I think the only comparison that can really be made is one team, in this case, one driver in NASCAR was dominant. But like, of course, the 16-0 baseball game didn't happen because there was a fundamental issue with the baseballs or the bats being used or the size of the bags or what, like variables like that go into, how good is the quality of racing in NASCAR. You've got, the car to think about and the temperatures of a track and all sorts of things that vary from weekend to weekend. I think trying to make that stick and ball sport comparison there is, a bit of a fool's errand, especially when you have this much of the fan base saying that we have a problem here. And again, it just comes back to the idea of, turning a blind eye to our faults here and saying like, well, actually, if you look past the leader, there was a lot of great racing there. Maybe some of that's on Fox for not showing us more battles throughout the field here, but I
don't typically lean on that. That's probably part of the issue that you didn't get to see the rest of the field. But
there's a lot of different layers of this onion that you can keep peeling back. But again, I think it's not unreasonable to suggest that we have an issue and we need to work on trying to find a solution when this much of the fan base is reacting so negatively, and has been reacting so negatively for several years now to the products that a track that was once, I think, a top 5 for sure, fan favorite on the schedule, has kind of fallen down that list in recent years. And the fact that we're at a point now where fans aren't looking forward to coming back to short tracks. The more short tracks,
that's not good.
Cry that we were getting during the Gen 6 era is really falling by the wayside. And again, I don't know if that's just because the Gen 6 intermediate package wasn't great, and they focused so much on preparing the next gen car to race better on those tracks that the short track package suffered for it. I don't know if there's any validity to that hypothesis there, but I mean, again, I look at what we saw. I mean, I got to be honest. It was tempting to switch over to Long Beach. You had the Masters going on, which I know is that might put a dip in the TV rating this weekend. So that was tough for NASCAR to go up against that. Really don't understand why Fox and NASCAR and IndyCar couldn't work together better to start the Cup race at 1 and then Long Beach come on at 4:30, so that there's less, if any, overlap between the two races there. It was a little strange actually hearing the Fox booth say like after the NASCAR Cup race, tune into IndyCar when IndyCar was already like a third of the way over, or halfway into the race at that point. But again, that's a discussion for another day in terms of those logistics. I think the biggest issue right now is trying to fix the short track product in this sport, and particularly at Bristol, because again, I don't think we can go back in the fall for the night race and get a product like this and expect the majority of the fan base to be satisfied with what they're seeing.
No, and I think Kyle Larson's already your winner for the fall race. I mean, why not?
No, wouldn't bet against him. Yeah. Nicholas also adding, when it comes to Bristol, the 05 and 02 and 08 night races. Yeah, well, there you go. But 08, again, that's the COT
Progressive
on the
banking.
reconfiguration. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I don't know how much of it is the track necessarily. I mean, and I don't know what you would do, because, I mean, you could talk about trying to go back to the old configuration, or you could, like, there was a time where it was asphalt, right? Like, I mean, concrete versus asphalt's another part of a debate that
Dale Jr. I know Dale Jr. is on the asphalt side of that equation.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, he watches a lot of 70s races over and over again, so he's quite familiar with asphalt Bristol. That's also when it wasn't a Coliseum at all. It was just another short track,
Yeah. And I mean, and I guess that's part of it too. Like, I don't know how, like, the days of course, nobody's asking, like, we need to go back to the mid 2000s when the hype was at an all-time high and the popularity was to the point where the spring race was selling out all 160,000 seats.
Yeah, that's what they built all those seats for.
Yeah. I mean, that was a solution that worked at the time. I don't think we're, at least not anytime in the near future, going to get back to, being able to pack 160,000 in for the spring race to that track. But if we could if we could do a little bit better with the attendance and make it not, seem like it's fallen so hard, then I don't know. I think, but again, I think the biggest thing we have to do to improve that is improve the on-track product. And it's very hard. I can only imagine how difficult it is to convince a first-time viewer of the sport or a casual fan of the sport to buy a ticket if that's the product that they're seeing on TV. And again, Fox and also Turner and Prime and NBC, to be fair, all our TV partners, CW, have a big responsibility there as well, to make sure that their product is entertaining to watch and of high enough quality. But again, there's only so much they can do to present as presenters, if the on-track product isn't that great.
The people that used to buy a bunch of tickets that maybe don't buy as many tickets anymore, I guarantee you'll get them back in some capacity if you increase the horsepower. Like, if you just give in to their demands and increase the horsepower and lower the blade.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as complicated as some might think.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. Joe here in the chat saying, I think dropping Bristol to one race until there is an improvement will help. Darlington was dropped to one date, now has two. Yeah, I mean, again, that's you know where I stand on the issue of one date versus 2 dates, but I think that the tracks that do warrant 2 dates right now are certainly more your intermediates, and I mean, again, you can go into market size there and attendance and all that. That's a big part of, I think, why Homestead might not get the finale, even though there are cries for that to come back. Is how can you justify the finale here if the attendance isn't what we need it to be? So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a businessman. I know that there's obviously a lot that goes into decisions like that, but I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that we have a problem. When less than 20% of race fans are satisfied with the on-track product at Bristol, of all places, when we're talking about clean air making such a difference at Bristol and short tracks of all places.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable to call that out and say something has to change. We can debate what that solution is, but if you're just going to sit here and say, like, guys dominate sometimes and, the product's actually not that bad and you guys just don't know what you want. Well, maybe we don't know exactly what we want, but we know it's not this, right? Like, we can look at this and say we've seen it. We've seen better races at this track in the not too distant past here.
And the people telling you that have seen better races at this track.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Search your thoughts. It to be true.
Yeah.
Like, you've seen it before. It can be done.